Hey, Stoney here. I'm joined by Clint Leewood, and this is Mechabellum Tournament. At the bottom here, we have Fizeal playing as a quick supply specialist, and he is up against Rackelhahn playing as a fortified specialist. And I believe the MMR between these two players, I think they're both at least 1900 plus, with Fizeal maybe going even 2000 plus. Rackelhahn, I think he's still under 2000. So looking at the board here, right out of the bat, we see something very interesting, triple Stormcallers. So what do you think of that, Clint?
I have never seen this before. It is an interesting start. It's not, I don't know. I tend to avoid Stormcaller starts when I'm laddering. But Fizeal obviously knows something that I don't. His opener is Stormcaller Crawler. I don't know. I don't think this should work, but Stormcallers do have quite a bit of DPS early on, and especially in the early rounds. So maybe it does.
Yeah, the problem is on the left-hand side because this Arclight is going to get popped in about 2 shots. But he does clear out most of these crawlers, which means this Swarm Crawler is relatively safe for everything else. At this point, I think Fizeal is not really playing for the early rounds. I think there's a very good chance he's going to go with 4 squads of Stormcaller. He's even saving a position for it right here. He's already got 3 Arclights, so he's going to make that 4 Arclights. And he's going to start adding a lot of chaff and wait for that melting point drop. That's my take anyways.
Interesting.
A very popular build. It's very hard to defend once you get the ball rolling. But let's see. I mean, right now, Rackelhahn's board is not exactly optimized against Stormcallers.
Yeah,
so I think Fizeal does have a chance here. So we see additional chaff here, allowing this Arclight to survive a little longer.
Whoa.
Really
high
heavy
explosive
investment.
ammo.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow, it's been a long time since I've seen someone invest into Stormcallers this early, this fast, especially how prevalent War Factory plays were last month. Wow, okay.
Yeah, you were mentioning the 4 Stormcaller play, and for me, right, once a person slams the 4th Stormcaller, I'm like almost certainly going into War Factory. So I'm curious. I'm curious to see if that will be how the game transitions, right? Especially if Fizeal wants you to go War Factory because he's going to be going Melter and Arclight, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
The matchup is pretty favorable for the melting point right there.
Yeah. I recently had a game where my opponent went pretty hard into Stormcallers, and I went 2 War Factories with anti-missile, and I still lost. He ended up taking Launcher Overload, and he ended up adding another 4 squads of Stormcaller and just straight up overpower my anti-missile. I remember the last round, I had 2 War Factories, and I added like 8 anti-missile devices because I was worried about EMP, and I still lost. And I was like, oh my god, this is so shameful. So it could work.
Yeah, I have definitely been on the receiving end of that. I have had the launcher overload, overload my anti-missiles. But Rackelhahn is paused at the screen, really thinking about what he wants to grab. And we were talking about War Factories, and there is improved War Factory, which, buffs the range by 10, making that matchup into Melters a little bit more favorable.
Mm-hmm. But is this going to be a trap card, though? Because he is going with a lot of Stormcallers. So if you put down War Factories and he just continues to pile on Stormcallers, would that not be a little too much? Because now if you take Improved, now they're more expensive. But it doesn't mean that their anti-missile is going to be that much better.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think realistically, right, it's just best for like this concept of like Battle Factory is what they call it.
Yeah.
But a flank coming in, a wasp group, the wasp swarm being summoned. This will delay a lot of DPS on the front line, maybe allow these sledgehammers to work. Do you think we're going to be seeing Mech Rage here in a little bit?
I think so.
Oh
Mech
my
Rage makes a
gosh.
lot of good sense here, especially with the chaff that's kind of coming in, ramming them through. Um, but it's still not winning though. Rackelhahn is still not winning.
And these Stormcallers just are just chilling, just sitting back and DPSing.
Yeah, this is such a curveball at the. I guess now would be what the semifinals or the quarterfinals of this tournament.
I believe quarter, yeah.
Oof. Wow, what a curveball. And now all the Stormcaller is going to get leveled, and with high explosive, level Stormcaller with high explosive is actually quite deadly. The splash damage is now strong enough to kill medium-sized unit like the sledgehammers.
Yeah, and we only see one sledgehammer on the other side that has a level. Oh, sorry, two that have a level up potential here.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rackelhahn is basically forced into taking that, honestly.
Yeah, pretty much. Anything on the ground right now is just so risky. Knowing that Scorpion was also an option and that was something that got picked now with range, nothing is going to be able to get close to Fizeal's board without suffering heavy casualties.
This is a good move from Rackelhahn, though. I really like this idea of taking these crawlers and running them across the map just to buy yourself some time to get your units into position, right? But I mean, there comes the Stormcaller GPS, almost one-shotting one of the marksmen in the back.
Yeah,
and the other reality, right, is that now with barely any chaff in the front line, these Scorpions have free reign over these sledgehammers, and Scorpions don't care about level 2 sledgehammers, unfortunately.
I'm going to throw a box right here, and I'm going to say that's where the majority of the Fizeal's army is going to be, and of course, when the units are dead, he goes up to get tower. But that's where the majority of the army is going to be, and I would recommend Stormcallers on Rackelhahn's side. I think if anything, Rackelhahn has got a more, I guess, army with a greater movement, right? So he's able to move forward, tank shots, but Fizeal, most of his stuff is in that box. Stormcaller will actually be a great option. And who says you can't go Stormcallers when your opponent already has 4 Stormcallers?
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea at all, honestly. But something very interesting and I think very aggressive that we're seeing at a Fizeal here is range specialist was picked up, which is one of those cards that I feel like a lot of people tend to avoid. It's a little overcosted, I think, but interestingly enough, we're not seeing mech rage first from the sledges. We're seeing range, and I think that's a mistake. I don't think
that's a mistake. Yeah, that's definitely a mistake because not only allows the tanks to stop short and possibly even at the first volley of the Stormcallers and shooting at the chaff. I mean, that's just working against them.
I don't know about the melter either. How about you?
No idea why the melter is there. I think the melter is supposed to be an answer against the Scorpions, but there's no range on it, and the Scorpions right now outrange the melter by about 40 meters. So I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I was about to say, I feel like Scorpions can kind of duel a melter in some capacity. You know, maybe not win, but with a little bit of chaff and a little extra time to work through, like it will kill the melter very quickly.
Yeah. All right. I think one possible response against this sort of Scorpion and Stonecaller fight was, and I say possible because I don't know if it's actually good, is to go with Fortress with Shield. Because they got high explosive, they will actually not do too well against Fortress with Shield. So allowing you to get that initial tempo or initial speed to get all of you into firing range. And once you're in the firing range, I think you're in a pretty even fight.
Yeah, Rackelhahn is in a lot of trouble here, and I don't think there's anything that he can really do to try to stabilize. We are going into a unit drop.
There's a Sandworm. And it is, I mean, he can just take Ignite on his Fire Badgers. He did decide to just go heavy in the air.
That's where my head was leaning. If you look at Fizeal's board, the only thing he really has to clear air right now is a couple Mustangs. So, you know, if the boats are able to do some amount of work, it could work. It could pan out. Part of me says, okay, what did Rackelhahn sell? Oh, we sold a pack of wasps. Part of me is like, I want to sell that melting point, and I want to like double tech my my overlords. Like I want to go like launcher overload and rain.
Yeah,
I really see range here.
Yeah, okay, range, no launcher overload. I still don't know what the melting point is doing here. It has done 2,000 damage last round.
And
these marksman has done very little damage, right? Yeah, I think what it really is that Fizeal just threw him a curveball, and Rackelhahn doesn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, and the reality, right, is that if we did sell that melting point, we would have had the money to do launcher overload and range. So, yeah, I think a bit of a misplay. I think the wasps were fine, right? We just want to give our overlord some time to work. But yeah, this is GG. I don't think there's enough clear here for Rackelhahn.
Yeah. It's working his heart out, but no, not with the debuff, no.
Yeah, with a debuff, that's it. All right, well played to Fizeal, honestly. Some cool stuff. I would be hard-pressed to answer that Stormcallers early on, too. I think the reality, right, is that 4 Stormcallers that early on is a lot of damage presented on the board, and it forces a really hard answer, and it forces a really hard commit, and Rackelhahn kind of succumbed to the pressure.
Yeah. I mean, even if he doesn't have to have like a hard counter like this, 4 Stormcallers can be adequately countered with just 4 anti-missile devices. That's just 400 supplies. No biggie.
That's
right?
true.
They don't have launcher overload, right? I think he was just so fixated on hard countering this in air that he's forgetting some of the simpler answers.
Yeah, and the thing is, right, with wasps, I feel like wasps can only win you a round, unless they're like core to your army like Wasp or Wraith. But if you're just doing it to like cheese out a round because they don't have great answers outside of Fangs or whatever, like you have to know that the next round your opponent is going to send it, right? So
yeah,
sure. It's tough.
Yeah. Well, it's a good game though. And I hope you enjoyed this game, and I hope to see you on the next one.
Prepare your tactics. Mechabellum's calling. Deploy your fortress. The battlefield's alive with swarms.